the tzaddik feels the suffering of the world, the more alive he or she is. It's also a paradox. It's like the greater the pain, the greater the gain, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
So all these paradoxes, so I think that's all that's in that metaphor, the shikar and the angel.
Mm-hmm.
Morning, everybody. Chassidut and Parshat Vayehi. And here we are. I'm going to quickly share the screen so you can see both the pasuk and the commentary. Today we're going to look at commentary by the Noam Elimelech on Sefer Bereshit. And I love the stories about him and his brother Reb Zusha, and how they were both giants but also opposite in their style, etc. So anyway, and so Reb Elimelech means God the King, and he was kingly. He was very malchudik. Reb Elimelech, his court was very large, and Reb Zusha was the opposite. He was more of a simple kind of hidden saint, and great stories about both. Anyway, so we're looking at Vayehi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim. Jacob lived in the land of Israel, 17 shana, 17 years, and the number 17 here is going to be critical in the commentary. Vayehi Yemei Yaakov shnei chayav, in the days of the life of Yaakov were Sheva Shanim ve'arba'im u'me'at shana, 140 and 147 years. And if you want to look it up, it's Genesis 47, verse 28. And for those of you who want to have the text up on the screen in front of you, you can go to sefaria.org, go to Chassidut, Noam Elimelech, look for Sefer Bereshit, the book of Genesis, Bereshit, Vayehi 1, and then it's paragraph 2 inside that chapter of commentary. And Elimelech of Lezhinsk, what's interesting, apropos, he lived from 1717 to 1787, and his commentary is about the number 17. So I thought that was, I just realized that when I was looking that up.
Because towards the end of last week's Parsha, Yosef Tzaddik brings his father down to Mitzrayim, and at that point, and is introduced to the Parite, and at that point, Yaakov Avinu was 130 years old.
Yeah.
Now, at the beginning of this week's Parsha, which is the concluding Torah portion for the first book of Bereshis, we skip 17 years. These crucial 17 years, they're skipped over. And now at the beginning of Vayehi, we have the departure. I'm not going to say death because Yaakov Avinu lo meis, but we have the passing away, so to speak, of Yaakov Avinu, and he's going to bless his children, his grandchildren, and that's going to be the end of Sefer Bereshis. But these 17 years, even though they're skipped over, they're critical.
Yeah.
It says Vayehi, and the Baal HaTurim says on the words Vayehi, the Baal HaTurim says he lived the best years. He lived in Mitzrayim means he lived his best years in Mitzrayim.
Right.
Because he had a rough life without going back into it. He had a very rough life.
So what specifically is it? It's about the construct of the word Vayehi, or
just why does it say Vayehi?
Uh-huh.
He doesn't have to say. He just says, and Yaakov called over his sons to bless him before he died, and he died. What do you mean? And he lived in, of course he lived in Mitzrayim. Where else was he? Right? So on the word Vayehi, the Baal term says, what do you mean he lived? He had chayus. His true chayut.
Right.
He was enlivened in Mitzrayim.
It's not that he was just spent 17 years, but he really lived it up for 17
He lived
years.
it up, so to speak.
Yeah.
He finally had the spiritual breath to take a deep breath and to live his full spiritual life.
So the Rebbe Elimelech says the following: "Vehine ikar hachiyut shel hatzadik al yedei atfilah." Vehine, behold, the essence of the life, or the life force, or the aliveness of a tzaddik, a righteous person, is through prayer. It's his opening statement. שעל ידה הוא מדבק בהבורא יתעלה כנ"ל. That through it he cleaves, he attaches himself with the Creator, the holy, the supreme Creator. וידוע שעל ידי שם הקדוש היוצא, וידוע שזה שם הקודש היוצא מהפסוק את השמיים ואת הארץ נברא העולם. And as we know, through the holy name that is extracted from the verse in Genesis, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Through that, the world was created. So just to explain that it's because, for our viewers, that this is the very first few words of the Torah itself. And it says that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So literally, this is what it tells us, right? That God creates the heaven and the earth. So those words, et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, hu gimatria tov, has a numerical value of the word tov. So the word tov means good, but the numerical value of tov is 17. Now, how do we get that from et hashamayim ve'et haaretz? You get it from the acronym, from the first letter of each of those words. So the first letter of Aleph is 1. The first letter of Hashamayim is 5. Add that up, you get 6. The first letter of Ve'et is 6. So add that, you get 12. And the first letter of Haaretz is 5. So you get 17.
Right. And the many names of God, if anyone has dabbled into the Kabbalistic aspect of the names of God, there are many names of God, and then within the different names of God and the Hebrew letters which are representing the names of God, there are different permutations.
That's right.
And switch arounds of the Hey and the Yud and an Aleph and a Vav and a this and a that. So he's taking from, as you said, the acronym of the heaven and the earth, and the first letter of each of those words represent a particular permutation, combination of one of God's holy names through which God so-called created the world. And it just so happens, as you said, that these 4 letters add up to the number 17, which happens to coincide with the word tov, which means good in Hebrew, also 17.
That's right. So I have a question for you, because there's one piece I don't get here technically, that the acronym of the first of these words is Aleph, Hey, Vav, Hey, which is very close to Yud, K, Vav, K, but there's that Aleph in the beginning. So I'm just not sure about the technicality about why.
Right, because there's another name which in Parsha Shemais, God says, "I am what I am."
Yeah.
And there's I don't want to say it, but it's with an Aleph. And so this is a combination, a permutation of a different form of God's name, which contains an Aleph as well.
Okay. So good. That's I need to study up on that particular technicality. It's not in my, not yet. Okay. V'ikar tfilat hatzadik hi ala shechina akdosha. Now, the main part of a righteous person's prayer is with concern to the Holy Shekhinah, the feminine aspect of God, or the indwelling, or the immanent aspect of God. So,
I just want to put in from the very first sentence you said, Reb Ruben, he said over here that the essence of the way a righteous person attaches themselves to their creators through prayer. I mean, we could speak for hours just about that sentence and what that means, but I just want to throw out there that one of my rebbeim used to say that when we learn Torah, we're listening to what God is saying to us, and when we pray, God is listening to what we're saying. It's like a relationship. So it's very interesting that one would think, and one is taught, that when I listen to my partner, that's the ultimate thing in a relationship. When I listen to my partner, when I'm learning a Mishnah or a pasuk. But here he's saying that really the way to get close, it's interesting. I was just thinking about this while you were speaking, that in a way, I guess, if I feel comfortable, like before we came on, we were having a pretty deep personal conversation, and I was spilling my guts to you a little bit, for part of it, about what I was feeling. And the fact that
I was spilling my guts to you, so both ways.
Yeah, but you see what I'm saying is, I think there's this element of where I feel comfortable enough to tell you what I'm really thinking.
Yeah,
to tell you what I'm really feeling.
Yeah.
In a way, that's saying that I'm attached to you. I feel safe.
Yeah, understood.
With you. So when I'm praying to God, really praying.
Yeah.
And I feel comfortable telling God what I want, what's bothering me. So in a way, that also shows, because I was thinking it's counterintuitive. Usually you hear that when you listen, you have to be good at listening, which is true. I'm saying, but here he's emphasizing sort of the opposite. No, maybe I got it.
That's right. Yeah. That puts it in context, because the listening is more passive, but the tefillah is the active. Where I'm reaching out. It's me reaching out to the Holy One, to the higher realms. And I'm saying, and I'm saying what I need to say, and that's how I'm actively firming up the relationship. You could say, right? I think that's what you think. So, here he's particularly saying that the Shechina, and I think. You tell me what you think, but I think that it's because Vayehi Yaakov be'Eretz Yisrael, because Shechina, Lishkon, the word Shechina comes from to dwell, and he's dwelling in the land of Egypt. So there's this, he learns this Vayehi Yaakov be'Eretz Yisrael, Mitzrayim. Well, then he explains it. So Yaakov is living, is dwelling in the land of Egypt, and Mitzrayim. Leshon Meitzar Yam. So he's breaking up the word Mitzrayim into two words, Meitzar Yam, and he explains Dahainu al yidei shaya metzaer atzmo al galut hashchina nikret Yam, that because the tzaddik, the righteous person, when he or she is praying, it's praise through taking on the sorrow, the concern about the Shekhinah being in exile, the Shekhinah being separated and distant from her source, from the Holy One, blessed be. And she is called Yam, she's called ocean.
Right, so there's a lot to unpack here. This is very, the shorter ones, Reb Reuven, you should know, the shorter ones are always dangerous because they're always more compact.
Condensed.
They're condensed. When you're learning the Slonimer, 3 pages, 3 columns, he draws it out. Boom, boom, boom. This is like, But when he says Golus Hashchini, he's talking about not necessarily. In other words, there are different aspects of God and how God created the world, the sphere, and all this. The lowest level is called Shekhinah. That's the level that relates to us in this physical world. It's thought about in terms of the female, the feminine.
Yeah.
And this is the aspect of God's presence that our sages teach us, that when we went into exile 2,000 years ago, the Shekhinah went into Golus with us, so to speak. That aspect of God wanting, desiring a dir b'tachtani, wanting this earth to be a godly place, became hidden and veiled and buried in our current state of galut, of
Yeah.
exile, of spiritual exile, physical
Right.
exile.
Yeah.
So when
It's
a Jew,
always parallel. So when we talk about the physical, we're actually talking about it's a metaphor for the spiritual. And we talk about the spiritual, it's also a metaphor. There's some expression in the physical. So we're right. So I just want to clarify that there's always the parallel.
right, it's a microcosm.
Yeah.
So when he's saying, now I want to amend what I was saying about prayer, because he's saying that really, it's not that I'm spilling my guts. It's that I'm crying about your state of mind. I'm crying over the Shekhinah. I'm not crying because I'm in Gullus. I'm crying because the Shekhinah is in Gullus.
Yeah.
It's not about me.
Yeah.
It's about God. God is suffering, so to speak.
That's right.
The Shekhinah is suffering. The Shekhinah is suffering because the Shekhinah, all the glory of the Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim may be rebuilt soon, and people and the knowledge of God covering the world like the ocean covers, like the water covers the ocean, or whatever it is. And that's all gone. That's all hidden that right now. We don't sense that. And that is feeling bad for, I'm telling you how I feel bad that you feel bad.
Right. That is how the tzaddik is talking to God.
Yeah.
The tzaddik is not kvetching about his or her own suffering, but so the beauty for me, the beauty, what I make of this is that the tzaddik, the righteous person or the sage, you could say, is sees in his or her own suffering, knows that is, or his or her exile, that suffering exile, and kind of using that synonymously, is really much greater than his or her own self. It's all over the world. He is not the only one. In fact, the whole cosmos is, this is what's happening to me is happening to everything, and he's aching for God because this is God's condition. It's not only my condition. And that's right. It's a wonderful, ultimate kind of altruistic, broad, really, that's holiness, you could say, almost by definition. That's what makes a sage. Yeah. Very exciting. Thank you. And through this, he gets this aliveness, this life force that that causes him to attach himself to the Creator, or vice versa. What?
Mamela, like once I have this mindset, and through my tefillah, I connect myself with the suffering of the other, of right. the divine. Then that ends up giving me
more aliveness,
a positive aliveness, because I'm hooked in, I'm tuned into the real reality,
right,
of the world, and I'm conscious,
right,
I'm fully conscious now. So that gives me a life that enhances my life force.
So in some ways you are feeling more. You're feeling more of the pain of the world, but you're also much more alive yourself. You're in your fullness. This is a little bit of a paradox. Baruch Hu, 17 shana. So he had that state, that ultimate, that high, you could say, enlightened state for 17 years. Pirush shekol zot haya bekoach ha'en sof b'tchilat habriya. What does that mean? It means that all of this was already in potential in eternity, at the beginning of creation. Shebara kol hanivraim, when the Creator created all creatures, b'chol olamot, in all the worlds.
Ayidei Shem HaKadosh.
Ayidei Shem HaKadosh, through the holy name.
Right, through that holy name.
That holy name, which is the Aleph, Hey, Vav, Hey. Shu Gematria Yud Zayin, which is the numerical value of 17, as we explained, Kanat, as we explained above, Shebo Nivra Olam, with which the world was created. So,
wow. I'll tell you, we're talking about the Noam Elimelech and Tefillah, and the power of tefillah, the power of prayer, and a totally different way of looking at what prayer is and what one can potentially accomplish through prayer. You mentioned at the beginning just a quick story, all the beautiful stories about the two brothers, and so there was in the times of the Rebbe Elimelech, there was a wagon driver, taxi driver, and he picked up a bunch of Hasidim, and they were getting rowdy in the back seat, and they were making l'chaims to the Rebbe Elimelech. Now, this wagon driver was a simple Jew. He never, this Rebbe, that Rebbe, you leave me alone with the Rebbes. But they were making him a show. Go, oh, our Rebbe is this, our Rebbe is this. Oh, you know what? Where are you going there now? Okay. Yeah, we're going there for Shabbos. Okay, I'm gonna come into the shul with you Friday night for the services, and I'll see what the big deal is, and then I'll let you know.
Yeah.
So they brought him in, and he's watching, and he couldn't see because the Rebbe was up front with a towel covering over his head, davening, praying from the chazan. And he was jumping up and down and making all kinds of motions. And the guy's, okay. So suddenly the talus falls down off the Rebbe's head. And from behind, he sees the back of his neck. And he sees that his neck is beet red. So the wagon driver says, oh, I get it. This guy's shikker off his gourd. He's drunk. He's drunk like a goose. He's been drinking vodka all day. Look at his back of his neck. That's why he's jumping up and down. I got you. Okay, cool. No problem. I got you. But then suddenly, the Rebbe Elimelech turns around and he sees his face. And he sees his face is like white, like a ghost, like an angel, like beams coming out of his face. So he got blown away by that. He says, whoa. He says, I don't understand it. From the front, he looks like an angel. From the back, he looks beet red like he's drunk, like a bum on the Bowery. He says, what in the world? I don't understand this at all. Then the Rebbe started to sing L'cha Doidi. And then the wagon driver said, oh, I understand now. I guess we have to hear the Rebbe Elimelech sing L'cha Doidi. I don't know.
So that story invites a whole nother level of interpretation, which I don't think we have time for right now. But I'll tell you what I see, though, in the story is, the paradox between, the drunk and the angel. And Rabbi Elimelech here is talking about the paradox between, like you said before, the listening and the speaking, so the passive and the active. And how the paradox of exile and the Holy Land, so his most accomplished spiritual years were actually in exile and not in the land in his homeland. The more the tzaddik feels the suffering of the world, the more alive he or she is. That's also a paradox. It's like the greater the pain, the greater the gain, you could say, So all these paradoxes, so I think that's all in that metaphor, the shikker and the angel. So so I think this is a good time. We're just going to have to force a stop here because I'm actually feeling like I want to go for another hour. There's so much so much more to unpack.
Yeah.
He also talks about he mentions how the creation starts from eternity, so eternity.
It's unfolding.
Yeah. And right. So, and he says, this is, I've read some, previous commentary. He says that everything, all the galut and all the suffering and all the, and all the struggles and all the toil, the work, not only physical work for sustenance, but also the spiritual work, to grow and to become each one of us, potentially, halavai, can become a tzaddik in our own way, but it takes that kind of work. It takes that kind of effort, right? So, and he says that all of that is already there in eternity. He says that all that in potential, bekoach ha'en sof. I have the advantage of having read a few other of his commentary, and this is seems to be a theme, about Nothing is created new. This is all of that has in potential was already in the beginning before even creation and all that. And that in itself is another, it's another.
What does that mean?
And he says it's all good. So that's why the gematria of 17 is Tov. Tov means good. And it's a number of meaning that we think it's trouble, but it's all good because it was all ordained from, it was all ordained from the past, from eternity, and it's all for, from some purpose for moving forward. All right, with that, we will. I'm going to ask that people, as usual, it's my job to say, have you subscribed already? Did I mention that? That's also all good. Give us a like if if this was meaningful for you, and God willing, we'll see you next Wednesday for more at 9 o'clock. Shalom for now.
Yuklu